Welcome to This Is Real Life with Jen Blossom, where we talk all things that make us most uncomfortable. From abuse to addiction and trauma to recovery, nothing is off limits. My guests and I will expose the parts of ourselves that hold the most pain and share the freedom that is possible. This is real life. Okay, well, you are here today to talk about something that I don't think a lot of people talk about. I was doing some research, and I think that the term that we're going to talk about was coined in the 80s, but I don't know if people talk about it a lot outside of specific scenarios. So we're talking about parental alienation today, and is it a syndrome or...
Well,
I guess it depends who you ask. I've been trying to...
I think that I'd have to look up. I was trying to look that up before I came in, but there was somebody, a psychologist, who I think coined the term, and
in the 80s, I think
yeah,
it was. Yeah,
I believe it. I don't know what classifies a syndrome or whatever, but unfortunately, it's still not really recognized in the courts.
That's exactly what I was reading,
and
I think it's hard to prove, right? Because it's like he said, she said, and like.
Yeah, the judges just really don't want to hear it, but it's just really sad because it happens all the time.
100%.
More than people like to acknowledge or even think, and it destroys kids' lives.
Well, it destroys everybody's life who's involved with the toxic person, you know?
Right.
Okay, so let's start off by that, I guess. So how did we meet, Nicole? Like, maybe we can chat about that. Do you remember how we met?
Well, we met through a mutual friend, and I think you and I were just instantly drawn to one another because, I think you're awesome, and you're like a unicorn. So you have this magical spirit, and
yes,
yeah,
I'll take it.
Yeah.
I'm in.
Well, I think you're like me. We kind of wear our hearts on our sleeves, and we just are fun, and we like to have fun, and
there's times to party, and when I have a time to party, I just want to party.
You let
loose, have fun, dancing, and getting dressed up. Yeah, we have a good time when we hang out.
And so I think we were just naturally drawn to one another, and I think we have a similar spirit.
Yeah, I think so too. And I just remember, like, catching up with you, and I remember, a couple of years ago, you like introducing me to this boyfriend that you had, and like you guys were amazing together. Like you could feel the like energy together, and I thought this was it for you. And I didn't even know the silent I guess toxicity that you were living through via his ex.
Right. Yeah. So I met it was like shortly after my divorce, and I met a guy, and I fell like super hard and super fast. And I fell madly in love with him. And he was a super, he's a great guy. He really is. He's an amazing human. And I did feel like we had a really beautiful love for one another. And unfortunately, I think sometimes people are in your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. I thought we'd be together forever, but I also didn't realize, it takes time to get to know a person, and then not just that person, but then the baggage that comes with them. And
I think that's the hardest part about like divorce and like, kind of then having to recreate family after a divorce, because there is so much baggage.
Right.
And I mean, and it sounds silly because it's not like they're like in a bag, but like in your case, you already had 2 kids.
Right.
I mean, you're a great mom, like you've got 2 great boys, and then he had kids. And so kind of trying to, I guess, mend or kind of blend.
Yeah. So that obviously didn't happen right away. Like that took time. And
how long before you introduced each other to your kids?
I think it was about maybe 7 or 8 months.
Oh my gosh. That's a responsible adult. I like it.
Yeah, my ex husband and I actually, when we were going through a divorce, we actually stipulated that we would not introduce the kids until we had actually been dating this person for a year. And not just that, but that they had to be somebody that we were interested in creating a life with. And, at the time when we created that stipulation, it sounded good. Mm-hmm. And then what happens is you're in this relationship and you fall in love with somebody and you're kind of like, okay, that was like kind of a stupid role. And because it's like even 7-8 months, that's respectable for sure.
Yeah.
But like to wait a year and then you're thinking, well, how is this person going to, like, my kids are such an integral part of my life.
Right.
And you want to know, like, how are they going to get along with him and stuff like that.
I guess, in terms of like you're a healthy adult, so you didn't really need like that stipulation. But there are some people who I assume would probably need that. Like they just introduce people like randomly, like kids are like puppies or something, like, the puppy will like everybody that comes in the room. Like, no, these are like human beings. Like they aren't like supposed to be, just introduced to all these people and expected to have emotional connections with them. So
right. Yeah, I have friends who introduced their children to like every female or male that they dated, and I just don't agree with that.
I think that's detrimental.
Yeah.
Okay.
I do too.
So the kids that he had from a previous marriage, how old were they?
At the time that we met, they were in 4th and 6th grade.
Wow, they were littler.
Yeah.
Because your kids were how old?
They would have been in 5th and 6th grade.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess they were all about the same age then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And were they girls or boys or?
He had 1 girl and 1 boy, and I have 2 boys.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then did they get along? Like, did you guys introduce each other like at the same time with the kids?
No. So he met my kids before I met his.
Okay.
And when they did meet the kids, and they totally got along. It was, they fought like siblings when we were all, at some point we started all living together, but prior to us living together, yeah, for sure, we would do outings, and it was just like normal, fun activities. Yeah. And
did you notice anything about their behavior in those early days when it was you and?
Yeah, there were things that I would notice that I just didn't totally understand at the time, because you're kind of, when you're getting to know somebody, you don't know all the intricacies of the way they parent, and you're kind of like, well, I'm not really sure why they do that or why the kids are acting that way. But one of the things that I realized going through a divorce is that however you raise your kids with your spouse is so unique to your family unit.
Got it.
And that when you're trying to blend a family, like, it's really hard because you have 2 other individuals who raise their kids in one way, and then we did it this way, and then you're trying to blend, and it's totally different. And so that was kind of an epiphany I had along the way, where I realized that nobody is going to have the same history that we do, or that
I think that's interesting too, because as like a child, right? Like, so as a child develops, like they learn based on like their parents and how their parents nurture them and how they discipline. So then to have like another adult come in and try to do that would be very confusing, I would have to assume.
For sure.
Yeah.
And actually, later on in the relationship, when we were in counseling for parental alienation and all the bullshit that came along with that, the counselor did say to us, she said, being a step parent is hard at best. So like under the best conditions of like where everybody gets along and it's this great environment and the kids love you and you love them, that's hard.
That's so hard.
Because you have 2 different families that were raised completely differently, and now you're trying to bridge this gap. And, especially when like kids are in 5th and 6th grade, they kind of have their routines established. And
5th and 6th grade is a hard time of life anyways.
Right.
I mean, like, that's hard. I remember 6th grade.
For sure.
That was rough. So when did you start seeing the parental alienation? Like, how long were you together, and what like were you noticing?
Okay, so here's a good example. Grant and I had been dating probably like 6 months, and I live in a small beach town called San Clemente, and I was walking down on the beach trail
Mm-hmm.
with a friend,
Mm-hmm.
and he was down there with his kids, who I had never met. But in my mind, I'm like, well, it's no different than running into a friend.
Absolutely.
And just being like, hey, how's it going? Blah, 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 blah. So I said hi. And he kind of paused and just waved, and the kids kind of gave me this weird look. Well, like the next day, he told me that the kids told their mom that, some random girl said hi, and then she was started accusing him of like, oh, you're bringing your girlfriend around our kids and blah, blah, blah. It just turned into this big drama. And I'm like, who cares? I just said hi.
Yeah.
Like, how would she even know that we're dating or not dating?
Yeah.
Or how is it any different than just saying hello to a friend, a random friend? Like,
yeah, it sounds like she's already a little crazy.
Yeah, she was crazy. So
Okay.
and so that was kind of my first drop in the hat of like, what? Why would somebody even be upset about that?
And that was the very beginning.
I was like, yeah, the first interaction. That was the first time I'd ever seen his kids, met them, and not really even met them.
So fast forward, I mean, I assume she's got a bucket of her own issues, but was she always like this? When you chatted with your boyfriend at the time, like was he like, yeah, she's always been this crazy?
Yeah. So throughout their marriage, he had actually left her probably, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 times because she was super abusive, and
verbally, mentally, emotionally, sexually,
physically and mentally. So yeah, she kicked his ass a couple of times. She actually, I think for like the first 10 years of their marriage, trained to be I think it was jujitsu or.
Oh.
So she wanted to be a competitive fighter.
Okay.
And I guess she has like, I don't know, 6 or 7 black belts. And yeah.
Okay.
She's gnarly.
All right.
So,
So did you assume that the kids went home and said, we just met daddy's new girlfriend? Or do you assume that they had meant she was like crying, like, so what'd you do today? And who'd you see? And like, was she?
Yeah, I think, as our relationship grew, and then like eventually I met the kids, like, and we were spending more time together. I think when the kids came home, there was a laundry list of questions that she would run through and ask them. And it was an interrogation.
So when did it become like detrimental to your relationship with your boyfriend at the time? Like when did it become like out of control? Like this is out of this.
Yeah. So I would say we were probably about 2.5 years into our relationship. We had been in the court system fighting for, he wanted a more regular custody schedule because he didn't have that. And the first time we tried to go on a vacation, we were trying to take the kids up to Mammoth and go camping. Mm-hmm. And she would not allow him 5 days in the summer to take the kids camping. So what I suggested was like, and he had an attorney at that time. And I said, well, you need to file a motion with the court. This is crazy. You shouldn't, like, why can't.
How long had they been divorced at this time?
I don't know if they were technically divorced because the divorce and the timeline of that is really convoluted.
Okay.
Because that whole process took so long.
I see.
But they had been probably not living together for like 3 years.
And then he just got to see the kids whenever she allowed it?
Yeah.
And then you came in and said, hey, like you need to be on a stricter schedule saying.
Well, yeah, like he was just at her mercy.
Right.
If she wanted to let him have the kids on a Friday night, then she would let him do that. And I was just like, this is bullshit. You have no stability. You have no regular schedule with your kids.
Yeah.
And then
that's not healthy for the kids. So
no,
right.
or anybody involved. And I was kind of like, I can't live this way. And if we're going to build a life together, then I want to know, like, oh, on Wednesday nights, we're going to have the kids from this time to this time. And on the weekends or every other weekend, whatever it is, just you kind of know what to expect. So we tried to take the kids to Mammoth. He filed an ex parte motion, and she tried to fight it. And basically the judge said to her attorney, he goes, well, this isn't a good reason to file an ex parte because an ex parte is like a emergency hearing.
Okay.
But the judge did say to her attorney, he goes, I highly advise that you advise your client to let Mr. Jones take the kids on the camping trip.
And did she?
She did.
Oh, she did allow.
Yeah.
Finally. But
then, because she was so upset that we actually took the kids camping and to do something fun, in retaliation, like for instance, we were driving home from Mammoth, and it was late, and we were going to be late. There was traffic, and I think the exchange was supposed to be like 6:00 or something like that, and we were going to be late. So I was texting because he was driving, and I was texting her saying like, "Hey, just letting you know we're going to be late." And we were supposed to drop the kids off at down where they lived in Carlsbad, and then she said, well, we'll just meet you at your house. And I was like, okay, whatever, fine. You want to drive up to San Quentin, no problem. And I had also let her know, like, hey, the kids are hungry. We're going to stop and get them food. And that kind of became a big deal. And I'm just like, this is ridiculous because my kids were in the car. They were hungry. Her kids are in the car. And I'm like, I'm sorry if it puts you out for an extra 30 minutes to feed the kids, like this, let's just be reasonable here. We're in a car for like 6 hours.
It doesn't sound like you're dealing with someone who's reasonable.
Of course.
Okay.
So we weren't, yes. But long story short, when we pull up to the house after being in the car for 6 hours, we were camping for 5 days. We were filthy.
Absolutely.
Absolutely disgustingly filthy. The campsite that we stayed at didn't have facilities to bathe. So we were legit camping, and like the only shower, we didn't have showers the whole time. The only bathing that we were even able to do was when we went swimming in the lake. So we pull up, she's there waiting. We don't even put the car in park before her kids are out of the car, run to her car. Don't even say goodbye, like no thank yous, no nothing, because they're so wired that like the minute she's there, they have to go.
She's such a narcissist.
She's so crazy. So then they get in her car and they, and we're like unloading, whatever.
Wait, hold on. How was the camping trip with the kids? Were they like happy and like,
yeah,
they loved it?
They loved it. It was great. Amazing. We brought up, my kids on we owned dirt bikes and a dune buggy, and they got to do all of that. We fished, we hiked.
And they loved it.
They loved it.
And the moment the crazy one comes around is the moment at which they're so scared.
So scared. They don't even say goodbye. They jump out of the car. They hop in her car. They're filthy. So this came back to bite us later in the butt, but it really didn't because the judge saw through it. She actually took pictures of the kids.
Okay.
In the car, filthy.
Okay.
And then turned them into black and whites. And because her son's legs had so much dirt and stuff on them, she said, like later on in one of the court things, that we didn't bathe the kids, and that B, he had bruises all over his legs from, because we were obviously like beating him up or something like that. Which,
well, you can get bruises from camping or from hiking and
being a boy. Right. So
okay.
She literally takes these pictures, and we're like, oh my God, we literally had just pulled up. Nobody had showered in 5 days, and you're taking pictures of him like that. Not only that, but I had requested, like, hey, we're going to be pulling up around this time. Why don't you let us bathe the kids? They're filthy. Nope, she won't let. So then it's like, that's the shit we dealt with all the time. She'd bite her nose to spite her face, right? So it's like, nope, you can't bathe the kids, but I'm going to use this as ammunition against you guys.
That is very borderline personality stuff.
So she suffers from borderline personality.
Sure she does.
So yeah, I could talk about that, but we did, she actually hired a counselor who she wanted to testify against us in court. And she was supposed to get permission from my boyfriend at the time to be able to take the kids to counseling. We found out, I don't even know how we found out, but basically find out, then we make our own appointments to go see this counselor because we're like, well, she needs to know both sides of the story.
Absolutely.
And she was meeting with the kids separately and the mom separately. And then she started to meet with us. Long story short, at the end of the day, she basically tells us that the mom wanted her to testify in court against us, and that was the reason the mom was taking the kids there, and that she ended up telling us that she believed that the mom actually had borderline personality disorder.
Yeah, I'm sure she does.
Yeah.
My mom has borderline personality disorder, and I'm telling you something right now, it really messes with you.
It's
because
so
because it wasn't my parents, they never got divorced. I wish they would have, actually, but she would do the same thing with my dad. It's all about control for them. They want to be able to control what and the kids are the easiest to control,
right?
Because they need you, right? I needed my mom,
yeah.
Like I needed her, so like whatever she wanted, and she would just look at you in a certain way, and you'd freak out, like, what did I do? What did I not do? What did I say? What did I not say? And that's like a huge part of my complex PTSD is this like anxiety around, and as kind of generalized, because as a child, it's all the time, like, because you live with your mom, you can't run away. Like, where are you gonna go?
Right.
You need her. And it's followed me all the way to now.
It's so crazy.
Like, that's like one of my major issues in therapy is dealing with a narcissistic, borderline personality, alcohol addicted parent.
Wow.
Talk about fucking crazy, right? I mean, and these poor kids are, it's gaslighting, it's brainwashing. It's saying their reality isn't what really is, and that their dad or you or whatever is not wanting the best for them, when in reality she's the one who's so concerned about herself, she's not looking at what's best for her kids. Like, that's the crazy part.
Totally. It's totally crazy. And
so what are the other instances? I know you told me once about
there's so many,
like a sunburn one, and I thought this is so fucked up.
Right. So there's so many instances, like okay, I'll give you a couple. I was on a date and with him,
mm-hmm.
And I was texting him. Well, actually, no, I had texted him earlier that day.
Okay.
Just some funny text messages. Sorry. And one of the text messages said, "I love you more than a penis loves a vagina."
Right. Good.
Okay. So his kids had taken his iPad without him knowing, and the iPad had sunk up.
Yeah, it's synced. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I get a call that night because him and I were going to play in a softball game together, and it's her, the mom, and she's like, at that point, she knows who I am. She knows I'm his girlfriend. She knows whatever. I've been introduced to the kids and all that. At that point, she calls me and she's like, I don't know who you are, and you're sending my kids, I can't remember, like X-rated messages, and I'm calling the cops and blah, 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 blah. Right. And before I can even say her name, and then I'm like, you know who I am, she hangs up on me. Right. I'm like, so then I call my boyfriend and I'm like, trying to get a hold of Triton. And then he ends up calling me back. He ends up driving down there to try to go intersect the cops.
Yeah. So
she calls the cops to come interview her child, who at the time was in 6th grade.
Which is traumatic in itself.
Horribly traumatic. Like, as a parent, would you ever...
Absolutely not.
If your daughter got a text message like that, would you ever call the cops to have them come interview her?
No. Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Ever. Yeah. Like, how traumatic.
How scary.
Yeah. So she calls the cops. Mind you, her boyfriend is a cop, right? But they're trying to build this case around us and all this bullshit. And the cops come, they interview the child. He gets down there and talks to the cops and explains the whole situation, which of course she did not do, right?
Of course not.
He's like, it's my iPad and it blah, 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 blah. And my girlfriend sent me these text messages and da, 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 da. And they're like, oh, yeah, this shit happened, blah, blah, blah. Here's your iPad back. And go on with your day. So that was one. There was another one when we were living together. The daughter had come to our house. The mom had dropped her off at junior guards in the morning. She got a sunburn. He picks her up. She comes home. The next day we're going to the beach. She walks into our room because she liked to be in there. And I see she has this nasty sunburn on her back. And I'm like, oh no, like if I don't send the mom a message and let her know, like she's going to blame me and him for the sunburn.
Right.
So I'm just trying to avoid any ammunition. Well, what happens is I take a picture of the daughter's back. I send it to her. And then she uses that against me in court months later. And the text message said, hey, I'm just letting you know your daughter got sunburned yesterday at junior guards. I just don't want to be blamed for it. And, I didn't want you to think that we didn't put sunscreen on. And which is ridiculous in and of itself that I would even have to do that. But you have to realize this is a person who uses every little fucking detail of
100%.
everything.
Yes,
against
I know those people very well.
Yeah. So I'm so afraid to do anything wrong, like feed them the wrong food or do anything because it all gets used against you. And then she submits that picture to the court, tells the courts that her daughter tells her that I threw her up against the wall, held her against her will, took a picture of her, and then was going to use it to distribute around the internet to inappropriate pictures of her. I'm like, as if. And actually, the cool thing is the judge who had the case literally looked at the picture and like took the papers and like threw it off the bench because he was so disgusted by her and what she was trying to do. And he actually said to her, he goes, he said, it's funny to me because this was a text message that was meant for your eyes, but now you've submitted into public records and court documents, so now everybody can see it.
Uh-huh.
So,
yeah, I love that he called her out, though, because a lot of people, like, especially with borderline personality, like, it's so confusing.
Confusing.
I mean, and you're an adult, right? Like, imagine being a kid.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
It is so confusing and so terrifying that no one ever holds them accountable. No one says, like, hey, I'm like, messed up if I do this, and I messed up if I can't win here.
Right.
Like, no one really says that because they're so crazy. They just don't, they don't want to like ruffle the feathers. They're like constantly trying to like keep the person happy so they don't, come at you and
go crazy,
stab you.
I remember the counselor said, and you can probably relate to this. She said that basically that there was nothing you could do to treat that.
So what I've learned is that it is because you can't treat somebody who doesn't think they have something to treat.
That's right.
First of all. But second of all, what I've learned through therapy, because of course I just want my mom to love me. Of course. She's my mom, even though like I have no indication that she's capable of love.
Right.
Because this mom, like she doesn't love her kids. If she loved her kids,
right,
she'd be doing what's best for her kids, not what's best for her own ego.
Right.
But the people with these disorders don't understand that. But typically it gets worse with age. Because it's just basically it becomes your personality, your habitual way of behaving. And everybody my mom, like she's got no friends. Mm-hmm. My dad's passed away.
Right.
I've cut off all communication in the last 4 years. There's not really a lot for her to live with, and she's the victim.
Right.
Right. Like, no. Like you are the perpetrator actually.
Right.
And people we don't want to be around you. Why do you think but they don't see it like that. They're the victim always. And in terms of like, I think for me, I look at somebody who's so crazy and I think, what happened to them?
Right.
Like they obviously weren't like brought up in a nurturing environment. Like, my mom had an alcoholic father who was abusive and this and that. But that doesn't like excuse her behavior. I always thought like, oh, but my mom, she had an alcoholic father. And I think to myself, wait, but I had an alcoholic mother and an alcoholic father. Wait, how is that an excuse?
Right.
I grew up with a crazy person as my mom. That's not an excuse. I'm an adult.
Right.
I'm responsible for my own shit, just like this lady.
Right.
And you know what? Honestly, for me, with people like this, they should be paying for their kids' therapy when they grow up because they're going to need some therapy.
Serious therapy.
Serious.
I mean, the kids are already, they were already in therapy. And it's interesting because when our relationship ended, I don't have communication with with
him
anymore. But there was a time where we still did communicate. And I do know that as the daughter got older and into high school, she really started to resent her mom and all the bullshit that her mother would put her
So typically what happens is there comes a point when your brain starts to function more as an adult, and they can start to see things like, that doesn't make sense. And like,
right. Why are you lying to me?
And
about
my
that?
dad's actually really nice. I actually like prefer to be around him. Like, you make me have anxiety. Like, he makes me laugh. Like, and then everything their mom did to try to control them and make them like dependent on her and like her be the focus,
right.
They end up fucking hating her.
Oh, for sure.
And that is where I'm at. I'm like, you used me my whole life,
right,
for your benefit.
Right.
F that.
Right.
I'm done.
That's what I said to him. I go, when they become adults, and I believe they will come around and call her for what she is. And I mean, the depths that her tentacles spread were so gnarly. Like, I remember, as part of the alienation, she told the kids that I was always trying to foster their relationships with the friends that they had already had, because they lived in Carlsbad, and I wanted to make their environment more comfortable for them, and especially coming up to a place where they didn't have a lot of friends.
That would be a kind thing to do.
Normal, logical.
Yes.
And so I would always say, hey, why don't you bring a friend up for the weekend? Or when we would, the few times we did get to take the kids on trip, I'd say to the daughter, especially because she was the only girl, I was like, why don't you bring a friend?
Oh, that's really nice. Yeah.
Oh, no. She was not allowed to have friends, participate in any activities that her dad and I were involved in. And her mom made that very clear. So clear, in fact, that when she was when we were still talking and they were in high school, she would sneak over to her dad's and have friends over, and it was understood that nobody was allowed to speak about the fact that she was having friends over at her dad's house, because her mother would become so enraged by the fact that her daughter had friends over at her dad's.
I think
how sick is that?
It's complete insanity.
It's total mind control.
It's unacceptable. It's so crazy. The thing is, people with borderline personality disorder are bright.
Yeah. Oh yeah. She's
so they can they can manipulate. And the problem is, so they never. I'm not going to say never, but for the most part, they're not really breaking laws.
Oh no.
Like, they're not really like, you're not seeing things as like right and wrong, black and white. Like, the way that they communicate to you, they're very righteous in their feelings and their reasoning, and so it's really hard to hold them accountable, because it's not easy.
They'll use whatever emotions necessary to prove their point. So it's like, if I'm going to tell you a traumatic story and I need you to feel the feelings I'm feeling, I'm going to just sob and cry and shake and convulse. And she was really good at all that too.
I'm sure she was.
And she actually went to all of my ex-boyfriend's family, friends, and like did everything she could to ruin his reputation.
So my question is this: do you know anything about her?
Yeah.
Still, does she have a lot of friends?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Typically,
none.
At this point in their life, people that are old enough, you smell bullshit. Like, for me,
yeah,
I can smell bullshit from a mile away.
Yeah.
And if I even have a whiff, I'm out.
Yeah.
Like, nope, no more, not anymore. I'm all done with that. So I think people, by the time they get, become adults, and they don't want any part of that shit.
Well, yeah, you start to tell all these crazy stories, and then things just don't add up. And I think people see through that bullshit. And sometimes, if you're a peripheral friend, you're just like, yeah, whatever, and I don't care because you're not a part of my life. But I think if you have any deep friendships, then...
I think for me, because it's really painful when someone who's supposed to love you talks bad about you, because my mom would talk really bad about me.
Yeah.
And people believed it because she was so good at manipulating with emotions, like you had said. But the truth always comes. It always does.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just kind of have to sit back and let it, and like just watch the wave, and eventually they get it.
Right.
You reap what you sow. It just happens.
Yeah.
And now, unfortunately for you, because I know how you felt about this guy, but unfortunately it didn't work out, because he was so connected with her, because she was the mother of his kids.
Right. And there was this crazy, like, I can't even describe it. It's so hard to put into words, but They were so emotionally connected on a roller coaster of dysfunction
Yeah.
that he never could really detach from that because he just lived in such fear all the time.
You know what that's called? It's called a trauma bond.
Right.
Where you actually, because you become so aware of the other person more than you are aware of yourself, that you care more about them and their feelings than you do about your own, because you don't even know what your own feelings and your own needs are.
Right.
It just happens like that.
So
she probably groomed him real well.
Oh,
they were probably together for a while.
Yeah, they were together, I think, for 20 years or something. I think, 20 years, married for like 17. And
he was probably pretty young when he got married.
Yeah, he was like 20, and she just totally fucked him.
Did she come from a crazy family?
Yeah,
or a crazy
she
background?
came from a crazy family. In fact, my ex-boyfriend told me this story about her dad, that he had a business partner in a business, and I think he did pretty well, and he got burned by his partner, or they had some type of falling out, and the guy, her dad drove a bulldozer through the guy's house.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that explains it.
Yeah. That was fucking crazy.
That's right. Right. And so if you grow up in crazy, you either become crazy or the exact opposite.
Right.
And that's me. People always look at me, well, how could you, how do you, you came from all this dysfunction. Like, what? I go, I could see it and I could smell it and I wanted nothing to do with it. I am the exact opposite.
Well, I think you either have the introspection to look at the situation or have situational awareness for what it is and evolve past it and decide, like you said, I don't want to fucking be like that. I don't want anything to do with it. It's gross. It's dirty. Yuck. Or you don't, and you're so, I would think with her, she was probably emotionally stunted at some age or some level.
From trauma.
From trauma, and then never moved past that. And so then she created this, or constantly continues to create a world of lies and chaos, and you have to live in the lies and the chaos because that's the control, right?
Right, you're safer when you do that, because if you don't follow her rules, then she lashes out.
Right. And you can't be honest.
Absolutely not.
Right. Because then people might actually see you.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, I'm sure she's in a world of hurt. Like, I mean, you can't, and that's the thing. I think that's why they always feel victimized, because they end up alone. They end up like being in abusive relationships themselves, because I mean, either they marry someone who is like him, or like my father, who was much more soft spoken, like really just a nice, kind person that they can like overpower.
Right.
Or they get involved with like,
yeah, I think crazy. That was my boyfriend. He was a pushover. He was the nicest guy. He wouldn't even hurt a fly. Like,
right.
I mean, we were together for 3.5 years. He never called me a bad name, nothing. Like, we had a beautiful relationship. And the reason the relationship ended was because of her. I just couldn't do it anymore. And I thought, these kids are, I think at the time her son was, he was probably like 12 or 13 when we ended it, or maybe he was younger than that. And I just thought, okay, I'm gonna have to endure her for another 7-8 years. Like, I can't.
Yeah, it's too much.
Yeah, and what happened for me was she like ruined my life during that time, and even though I have to acknowledge my own parts of it, but I was so angry and I hated her so much. It was like all I thought about. It just consumed my thoughts from the moment I woke up to the moment I went to bed. And there was no freedom in that for me anymore. And it didn't matter like how much I loved him. I just knew that it had gotten to a place where it was just too toxic. And I was super angry at her. And then at the there's like kind of a story as to why the relationship ended, but she came after my kids and said that they were abusing her kids and that her kids weren't in a safe environment. So she filed an ex parte motion. And what happens in an ex parte is that you get 3 minutes in front of the judge, and then he has to, from that point, he gives you a trial date, which he sets 6 months down the road. Sometimes they'll even push it out. Maybe it'll be a year. So you get 3 minutes in front of the judge to plead your case. So she gets her 3 minutes. And the judge basically tells my boyfriend that he can't make a ruling on whether the kids are in a safe or unsafe environment. But what he is, she said that they were at least safe with him, which is funny because she hated him so much. So what the judge did say was, okay, they are to be with you at all times. And we lived in a big house at the time. And basically the judge said, like, if your kids get up to go to the bathroom, you get up to go to the bathroom. Like,
if you're around or if your kids are around.
That's right. Which was a total prison, right? Like, he couldn't go run to the grocery store without taking his kids. If we were sitting on the beach, I remember one scenario, his son is down in the water. His daughter's here. She has to go to the bathroom. And his, he has to go get his son who's playing football with all the kids on the beach to walk because he can't be left, right? Out of sight.
Yeah.
So Grant he has to get his son. And the kids are all upset. Like, why do we have to do this? You're making our life miserable. But what they didn't understand is they did this to themselves because they would go home and tell their mom what she wanted to hear through the narrative of, oh yeah, we don't have any fun over there. We don't like it over there. They don't feed us. They don't do this. Da, 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 da. Like the list goes on and on and on. So that was the point at which I'm like, okay, you've made my life a fucking living hell. Like, I got super resentful towards them where I didn't even want to be around them anymore.
I understand that. I 100% understand that, especially when they're bringing now your kids.
Yeah.
Listen, you fuck with me all you want.
That's right.
Don't you touch my kids.
That's right. And for me, she had come after, like, in court papers, she had accused me of being like a prostitute and, you know, throwing her kid up against the wall and being like, so I saw the writing on the wall. I go, okay, you've basically accused everybody of everything, and now my kids, and I already knew where it was going, and to be totally honest, that's why I ended it. Because I go, I have 2 teenage boys. He has a teenage daughter. We all live under the same roof.
Uh-huh.
And I already knew that she was going to go for sexual abuse. And I was like, fuck that. I'll be damned if I'm going to expose my kids to that.
Yeah.
And I'm out. I already knew she would go there.
It is so sad that you know, you don't have to like be a good person to become a parent.
Right.
And that's like the saddest
a prerequisite.
part. Yeah, there's none. Like, you can be a complete asshole and have kids.
Yeah. And
now you're responsible for raising them even though you don't know how to do it.
Right.
And these poor kids become traumatically, you know, they're like maladapted adults because they never got their needs met as children and they were actually traumatized. Like, now here we are, like, this is how the cycle continues.
Well, I think the most fucked up thing that I got to watch, even though it's still hard to even put into words, is that both of those children were modeling the same traits as their mother.
Of course they were.
And they would lie, and they would cheat, and they would steal. And they would do it in my household. I remember one, it was the stupidest thing, but it was so, it was such a pivotal moment to me. His daughter had gone on a sleepover at a friend's house that she had eventually made a friend in San Clemente. And she had gone on a sleepover and spent the night. And she came back, and the next day I'm like searching my whole house up and down for, it was my deodorant. And I go in and I'm like, hey, Lonnie, have you seen my deodorant? And she's like, no. I'm like, okay, are you sure? She's like, no. I go, well, did you borrow it? Because if you did, it's no big deal. I don't care. Just, can I have it back? Because I'd like to put some deodorant on. I don't have it. Okay. So I keep looking. And then finally I'm like one of those OCD people. Like, I put deodorant on and it goes back on the shelf in the same place.
Know where it was. Yeah.
Every time.
Yeah.
And I live in a house full of boys.
Right.
And I use like secret, like, powder fresh.
Yeah.
Like, there's me and there's one other female in this house. Like, so I just go back in her room and I look through her bag and I'm like, oh, what's this? This is my deodorant. Why would you just, she's, oh, well, I didn't know what it was. I'm like, Really? Okay.
Yeah.
But that was just such a small example to me. But like that stuff would happen
And
all the time.
How old was she at that point?
She would have been in like 8th grade.
See, and so that's okay. So then I go to this. I go to like, well, that's kind of typical behavior for an 8th grader. They kind of go through this state. You like that's part of growing up. But when you have an a-hole mom,
right,
that stuff becomes like more out of control, right? Where they have a parent who is caring and nurturing. The parent disciplines them for lying and stealing or whatever.
Right.
They move on and they don't do it again. But children like this that watch lying and stealing, they do it and it doesn't get better. It gets worse.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So to me, it was such an example of what she probably modeled and did in her own home. When the mom, I'm picturing her mom coming in and saying, "Where is this?" And she's like, "I don't have it. I don't know." Because if she took it from her mom, she would get in trouble.
Absolutely.
Right? But I'm just like, hey, man, I just want my deodorant back. Like,
just don't want to smell bad today.
Like, I don't even care if you borrowed it. And I would tell her that. Like, I don't even care.
That's interesting. So that might actually not have been like an asshole move. Like maybe she was like, just needed some deodorant, but she was afraid of being in trouble. Because I remember I never really did anything bad. I was like, you never wanted to give anyone a reason to yell at you because you were going to get yelled at anyways. So like you're just trying, as a child, that's what you could control. You could control your own behavior. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to do everything perfectly. Like I wouldn't even think about doing it. But some children on the spectrum of being parented by these crazy people, they become like their abusive, crazy parent.
For sure. That was always a discussion that we'd have. And I said, my biggest fear for your daughter is she's going to grow up and be just like her mom. And the sad thing to me is that that's what she's going to model in her romantic relationships.
100%.
Like treating men and like lying and manipulating and you never know which way's up and which way's down. And you lie about the stupidest shit. And you're just like, I didn't grow up like that. So, I mean, honestly, like I didn't even believe evil. I mean, I know evil exists, but like,
she was that's
straight up evil.
My therapist would talk about like that sadistic, and I was like, I don't even know what that means. Like, no, my mom's a good person. It's like, no, like she's doing it to hurt you. Like the reason, the purpose of that behavior, there's no other reason for someone to do or say this thing except to hurt you and keep you in your spot, in your place. Like, holy cow, that is evil. It's evil. Like there's like no conscience anymore. You've habitually made your conscience quiet because you don't want to hear someone, you don't want to hear the right thing to do.
Right. Yeah, I think I don't even know, man. It's a crazy thing. I know what I was going to say. Okay, did you ever see the movie? I can't remember who was in it, but it was like I think it was Ben Affleck, and it's this crazy. She was blonde. I don't remember exactly who the actress was, but it's like where she plots out.
Oh yeah,
her murder.
Yeah, is it Gone Girl or Girl on the Train or one of those?
I don't remember.
Oh, I know what one you're talking about.
And then
darn it.
Basically, it's like the craziest story, and she does all this crazy shit, and she like, I think she like fakes her own death or something like that, and then at the end, it's like you have the antagonist and the protagonist, and she's so gnarly, and then she, I think, ends up pregnant at the very end, and it's all because he wants to leave her. And anyhow, at the end, it's like the craziest, gnarliest movie story, but he decides at the end of the day that it's easier to just be with her because she makes his life so fucking miserable and she's so fucking crazy that he just has to stay with her.
Yeah. And she's probably not going to do anything crazy enough to like get her and like wind up in jail or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like those people, they're so smart.
But that's like how I envision like the borderline personality disorder. That's like crazy. That was like the best depiction. I watched that movie and I was like, oh my God, this is my life.
Yeah, it's crazy.
This is this person. This is what she does to her life. But it's like you said, it's all peripheral, right? So there's nothing that you can quite put your finger on the pulse of this person did this or that.
And then for me, it was re-traumatizing, I think, for me. Like it would make the wound even deeper when I would try to explain it, but like people didn't get it.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, well, your mom yelled at you. Well, that happens all the time.
Right.
And you're like, no, but like it was different.
Yeah.
Like well, maybe she had a bad day. No, it wasn't like that. Like,
right.
How do you explain it? It's so crazy. And unless you've been involved in a relationship, a romantic relationship, or parental relationship, a friend relationship with somebody who has a personality disorder, you cannot understand it.
Totally.
It's insane.
It's insane. It's totally insane. And the counselor, when she was telling me that, I remember it was kind of like a light bulb, and I was like, oh, I have to get out. Like, I can't do this anymore. It doesn't matter how much I love this guy. And I thought, whatever, we just have to go our separate ways. And if we're meant to be, like, maybe 10 years from now, we'll find our way back to each other. But, now that I've had distance and time away from it, I'm just like, that's just not even a situation I'd ever want to even be a part of again.
And it's sad because, it's sad because you couldn't be in that relationship anymore because of all of these things. But like, thank the Lord that you like had the wherewithal to say, no, I don't want this for the rest of my life. Can you imagine like dealing with this crap forever and ever?
No, it consumes you.
Yeah. So, okay, if you could give any advice to anybody who's got this kind of situation going on, dealing with crazy, having the parental alienation where this one parent is trying to turn the kids against the other parent, what would you?
Oh, that's such a hard question. It's interesting because I've experienced it now in 3 different relationships. So the first one being the one that I've talked the most about because that was the most egregious, and then the following relationship I was in, he experienced it too, and a person that I have a relationship with, we're like just friends, but he's experiencing that now too. And honestly, like, I don't even know what the best advice is because it's such a fucked up, mean, devastating on all levels thing to experience. And it's really interesting because in my experience, the person or the parent who is actually doing the alienating is oftentimes the one accusing the other parent of doing the alienating.
It's the crazy.
Yeah, it's like they project what they're doing onto the other parent, which has happened 3 times now I've witnessed. And I'm like, this is so fucked up. And for the dads who are going through it, it's absolutely devastating. And in fact, we went to the leading expert who actually is trying to get the courts to recognize it as
child abuse.
Child abuse,
yeah, it is.
And it absolutely is child abuse. And it's sickening to me that the courts won't acknowledge it. But we actually went and saw him, and his advice to my boyfriend at the time is he goes, I honestly, in my opinion, the best thing for you to do is just walk away from your kids until they're ready to have a relationship with you and they can decide when they're 18. And he couldn't do it. And I don't know if a parent could, but he's just like, you have a person who will stop at nothing. And she really wouldn't.
Right.
She was the type of person, she would throw her kids in front of a fucking bus.
I'm sure she would.
To be right.
I'm sure she would.
And is there anything that you can do to stop another person from doing it? I mean, sometimes the courts will try to interject and say, I'm going to put a gag order on you and tell the mom, you need to stop talking to the kids, but do they?
Well, no. And that's the thing. I mean, people that parent like this and abuse their children like this are very smart. They're not 100%. Like overtly being like, there's no wound on the kid's face, right? The wound is
so deep.
It's
a mind.
It is. It's so completely insane. And it's so hard to explain, but I just hope, I mean, if this woman would have gotten the help that she needed from her shit,
right,
she wouldn't be behaving this way now, but she didn't.
Right.
And that's the fucked up part. The fucked up part is that nobody in her life ever said, hey, you're being a crazy bitch right now. Go get some fucking therapy because you're ruining your kid's life.
Right. Well,
like because listen, also this kind of abuse doesn't happen like one day you're like a pony and the next day. It is little by little by little. It's like addiction. It's like little by little by little. And before you know it, you are so out of your mind,
Right.
And it's so hard. It's hard to see. It's hard to, it's hard. It's hard. I wish I had the answer. I don't know, but I did read that there was a statistic that in divorce cases, there's 86% of the divorce cases in this particular study, there was parental alienation going on. 86%.
Yeah, and I would add to that 86% is probably
low.
No, well, probably low, but that out of that 86%, 90% of that is, I would say that most of the parental alienation is done by women.
Interesting.
Because
it is sad.
It is.
Because you want to believe, and I think that's one of society's issues. We want to believe, I'm so glad you said that because it brings me to this. We want to believe that moms love their kids.
Yeah.
It's always, in Disney movies, it's always the stepmom who does bad things, not the real mom.
Right.
The real mom loves their kid. People just don't want to believe that there could actually be moms out there who don't love their kids. Like that,
or their version of love is super fucked up.
Well, and that's not love, right? So it's so hard to believe that people would actually behave like this. There must be a reason why. Like there must be. We can't believe that someone would actually behave like this and treat their kids like this, or treat spouses or friends or whatever. It is so hard to convey, and it is so crazy because I think even, the courts, they want to believe that the moms love their kids and the dads are the crazy ones,
Right.
And listen, every case is different. I am not, I'm not about to put an umbrella over it, but I would have to say that I think that moms sometimes get the pass that they love their kids and they'll do anything for them when really there are some moms who are fucked up.
Well, I think what happens you've never been through a divorce. I have, and what happens in the magical world of divorce is you start to hang out with all the divorcees. Because married people hang out together and divorced people hang out together.
Okay, and single people hang out together and then single.
So all of my friends that I'm or my best friends are divorced.
I see.
So I have experienced all of this many times over. But what I was going to say is that there's coaching that happens along the way when, especially if a woman is going through a divorce. And a lot of times the attorneys will straight up tell them, you need to gain custodial advantage. You need to gain the financial advantage. You need to gain the advantage of the house. And so how do you do that? Well, it's a known fact that attorneys have and will advise their clients to create scenarios in which they can have their spouses arrested and get a restraining order. And it's so gnarly when you start to just peel away the layers of family law. It's the most fucked up system that honestly probably exists on the planet, especially here in the United States. And it's so gnarly what women and people will do to gain custodial advantage. So let's say if you have 80% custody of your kids, well, then a man has to pay you more money rather than if you have 50-50. But in my opinion, if you have two parents who are good, decent humans and love their children, and one's not a raging alcoholic or drug addict or abusive, and they're both capable parties, I don't understand why it shouldn't just be 50-50. That's, in my opinion, that's what we did. My ex-husband and I, my kids are well acclimated. They've thrived in life, and I have amazing kids who don't feel the pull of oh no, we spent more time at mom and dad, and none of it. It's just,
I wonder. Yeah, I feel like there needs to be more advocates for the children,
for sure.
Interesting. Well, I just wanted to thank you for sharing.
Oh, thank you for having me.
It has given me a lot to think about, and I want to go do more research. Yeah. How can we change this? Because that's, oh my gosh, so messed up.
When I was, just on a side note, when I was dating that guy first, I actually went, because I was so passionate about it. And I actually am still passionate about advocating for men and fathers, because I just think they kind of get fucked in our court systems. But I went to Chapman and went and did like this, it was like an intro law course, because I thought about going back to school and becoming an attorney and advocating for fathers, because I think our court systems are so fucked up, and maybe someday I will, I don't know. But I just think that more people have to advocate, for that stuff.
Amen, sister.
Yeah.
I love it. I love your passion. I love your heart.
Thanks.
I love
Thanks
your
for having
brother.
me.
You're the best.
Thanks.
All right, girl. Mwah. Love you.
Love you.